Hi there, everybody. It's Dave here. I hope you're doing great. It's so nice to hang out with you this week. And sorry for missing last week's episode of the Chief Family Officer podcast. It was my birthday on this past Wednesday, and we decided to take off to Morocco with the kids for the weekend. And it was our first time traveling to that continent. We had a total riot, a total blast. And just before we were taking off, my time was super crunched. I was considering, like, do I actually fight to maybe create some space while we're away to record this podcast? And I just decided, screw it. I'm just going to go all in on the time here with the kids, and we'll catch up this week. So delighted to be able to spend some time with you today. The topic that I want to talk about with you now is one that I have written quite extensively on over the last week or two. You're going to see, and maybe you've already read it, an article that I published called Penis Skin and Calling People Up. And I'm excited to be able to use the time today to go into a bit more detail on this particular story. It's a very true story and an important thing I want to share with you because for a lot of us, whether it's at home, whether it is at work or in our communities, we are very often privy to people behaving in a way that just feels incongruent with the things that we believe in, incongruent with the values that we hold, and the way that we feel others should be treating us or treating those around them. But more often than not, we leave our opinions dormant. We leave them dormant for very good reasons, mostly of which is because we don't want to create more conflict. We don't want to have that confrontation out of fear of the fracture that it might cause. And so we end up swallowing our truth and carrying forward and keeping those feelings that we have and the impact that it has on us, or potentially the impact that we see it having on other people, dormant. And I'm a big believer, like, especially when it comes to your family, you need to learn how to be able to speak your truth with your family. If you can't walk right down Main Street with those that you love and be honest around what your experience is, how those experiences are impacting you, you're fucked. You have to be able to do that at home. But it's a tricky skill. And I want to emphasize that it's a skill. It's something we can learn, but it's a tricky skill to build because for a lot of us, our experience with watching other people call out certain behaviors that we don't agree with, it has more often than not led to conflict, confrontation. So past hurt informs future fear. What I want to spend some time talking with you today is how do we call people up instead of calling them out? So where does this come from? Well, over the last 2 weeks, I've had a very real conversation with a client of mine for the sake of our conversation and protecting her, anonymity or her identity rather. I'll just call her Sarah. And Sarah was sharing with me that after 20, 25 years, there was a unique opportunity for her to share with her mother and father-in-law the impact some of their behaviors over the years has had on her. Right now, she's navigating a really important time in her relationship with her partner, where they're trying to figure out whether or not they stay together and where they go from here. And as amidst that process has come up the hurt that she's experienced over the last 2 decades plus with her in-laws. And there being an invitation to be able to have a clearing. But the question is how do I share the impact that their behavior has had on me without creating an argument or having to justify my feelings and myself, right? And that's a really important question. It's one that when we think about calling people out, like I said, past hurt informs future fear. There's a lot of reasons why we might not go and do it. And so I want to share with you what I had coached Sarah through around this particular opportunity in her life, because I think it's really going to help you too. So when it comes to calling people out, I want to start by emphasizing what I mean by calling people up, right? When we're calling them out, a lot of times when we are ridiculing or pointing out the behaviors, the things they're doing, the impact that they're having on other people or on us, it can, when we use criticism, be something that creates a really big divide, because implied in that is, I know better than you, and I think what you're doing is less than what you should, right? And people tend to disconnect in a variety of different ways. Sometimes people will avoid and just kind of walk away from that. They'll posture, they'll start to argue, or sometimes they just collapse, right? And they take that feedback really hard. And it disconnects them from us and it disconnects them from the family. The whole idea of trying to bring this up is not to make somebody experience the pain that we had. It's to help them learn and understand how their behavior is impacting others so that way they can grow from it. That's the whole idea and should be the intention of calling somebody out. So calling somebody up, what this means is that we have a value that we believe in, and we are inviting them to be able to see their behavior through a different perspective and a different lens so that they can make a choice to do something differently, right? So how do we do that? One of the things that I was sharing with Sarah is the power of storytelling. If we want to call somebody up, one of the best ways that we can do that is by modeling good student behavior ourselves. So once you get really clear around what they're doing, what the behavior is, and why it bothers you and what the impact is, I want you to get really clear on what is the value that you're trying to stand up for. And in Sarah's particular case, with her in-laws over the last 20, 25 years, there was a variety of things that took place where, as somebody who comes from a different culture than her in-laws, there was some remarks that were explicit or implied over the years that led her to feel like she was the victim of racism in the home. And in addition to that, just small side comments around how she would do certain things where it just felt like she could never do things perfectly or in the right way. And so it always kind of led her to kind of questioning herself as to whether or not she does know how to do what she's doing. And that self-doubt can really start to creep in over the years. And just overall making her feel like she wasn't accepted as a core part of the family. Now, she had never brought this up to her in-laws before. And in speaking with Sarah, she really firmly believed that her in-laws had no idea the impact that they were having on her. And so this is so important. Like I said, I believe that people would do better if they knew better. And it's so important that Sarah learns how to be able to communicate the pain that she's experiencing, right? But it's challenging. How do we do that? So I was saying to her, get really clear around what that value is. And she's like, well, I just want them to be able to respect and understand the experiences of other people when it comes to how they communicate with them and how they care for them. And it just feels like they're not understanding or even taking the time to really care what my experiences were. And as a result of that, how their opinions and the things they talk about might be having a pretty big impact on me, right? So once you get really clear around what that value is, the best way that we can invite somebody to see that situation through a new perspective and to call them up is through storytelling. By telling a real, honest story about how we learned that value ourselves. And so I asked her, well, what is a story that comes to mind? And she was struggling. So I said, well, let me tell you mine. Let me tell you a real story that happened to me back in 2017, where I learned this value, where I learned how important it was to really spend time understanding somebody's experience, what they've been through, to take an informed approach to the way that I build a relationship with that person, the way I talk about certain matters that we both care about in a way where I can be really intentional and mindful. Okay. And so the story I decided to share with her was, as per the name of the article, penis skin and calling somebody up. This was a real incident that I had back in 2017. Me and my co-founder of the Digital Trade School were going through a really exciting time where we were starting to grow our team. And we were running a program that was creating a ton of impact in our community. We were helping recent graduates find new meaningful work opportunities through applied digital marketing programs. And what we wanted to do with some of the funding that we were raising was to hire a researcher to work alongside us to be able to study the efficacy of the program that we were running. Makes a ton of sense, right? So we had gone through some interviews. We had a whole list of applicants. We did a first round of interviews, and we had narrowed things down to 2 or 3 final candidates. And one of the big things that my co-founder and I really believe in is when we are enrolling somebody in the opportunity to join our team, we really want to make sure that we're helping them make a decision that's in their best interest. And so as a final stage of the interview process, we always like taking candidates out for a lunch, not to talk about work, but to be able to talk about them, what their interests are, and trying to understand how this opportunity was going to help take them to where they wanted to see themselves in 2 or 3 years or now, with or without us. And so for this particular lunch, we had, again, for the sake of our conversation, we'll call her Heather. We had invited Heather, this wonderful young lady, out for lunch for sushi. And when we were looking at her as a potential fit for this role, she couldn't be a better fit on paper. And we had a great first conversation with her. She was a recent master's graduate, a ton of research background, doing qualitative interviews, a lot of analysis. She had a great way of building different assessments. There was a lot of reasons why she was a really good fit. She also had a lot of experience as a teacher herself. Her background was in English literature with a real focus on feminism and women's studies. And for all the right reasons, we saw that her skills were a really good fit. We took her out for lunch. And we sit down and we just hit it off right away. I remember the three of us, we jumped right into things. We were asking her what she enjoys to do outside of studies, got to know her research a little bit better. And then very quickly, she was asking us about ourselves and what we're interested in. And that was a really good sign for us. There was some really good relatability and camaraderie that was so quick to be able to establish. And as she was asking me about what I was interested in at that particular point in time, I was doing Ironman races. And I happened to be reading Tim Ferriss's book, The Tools of Titans. Maybe you've read it before. And I was jokingly sharing as the food was coming out that one of my big goals right now with training is to be able to lose a bunch of weight and trying to get my body fat percentage down to less than 10%. And I had shared that I was reading a recent book by Tim Ferriss called Tools of Titans, and how there was a really funny part in there where they had said, you'll know that you have body fat that is less than 10% when the skin on your abs is like penis skin. And I started to laugh. Everybody else started to laugh. And I was just candidly sharing a joke. For those of you who know me, sometimes I find weird shit pretty funny. Maybe you do too. But I'd shared it in a way that was really genuine. It was me just reporting what I was learning. And we were all laughing about it. We kind of carried on. We thought nothing of it. Well, lunch wraps up. We had a great lunch, continued the conversation, and at the end, we had paid for the bill. We did this with everybody that we take out for lunch because it's a part of what we believe is the responsibility that we have, and we're asking somebody to come out to interview with us and for their time and their energy. So we take care of lunch, and on the way out, my co-founder opens the door and helps both of us go through, or allows us to go through first. And he had, on the way out for her, kind of put his hand on her back. We went back to our office. We had talked about how great of a conversation this was, how excited we were about the work in front of us, how we thought she was a great fit. She expressed a lot of excitement, and our commitment was, hey, we'll get back to you on Monday or Tuesday to let you know what our decision is on this. And she was really excited about it. As soon as she had left, truthfully, my co-founder and I, we both looked at each other and we thought, this is perfect. She's a wonderful fit. And we split like peas. We wrapped up. We went on with our day. That weekend, I flew out to Montreal. My grandfather passed away that week, unfortunately. And that weekend, I headed up to Montreal for his funeral. We did that all weekend. And then I remember on Monday, we were still in Montreal. My wife, Jen, and I were walking through the mall together to grab a couple things. And my phone starts to ring. I look down at it. And look at the caller ID. It was the university, a partner of ours that we were working with on this particular program, or it was the name of the university. So I pick it up. Hey there, how are you? Hi, is this Dave Inglis? Yes, it is. How can I help you? Well, this is so-and-so from the Human Resources Department. I'm calling because we have received a sexual harassment complaint against you in the last 24 hours. And immediately my entire world stopped. And I was like, are you sure you have the right person here? Like, I haven't even spent time on campus. I'm not sure where this would have taken place. Like, are you sure you're looking for me? Yes, this is David. Yes, that's who we're looking for. Okay, what happened? Well, immediately they had brought up that this young lady that we had taken out for lunch to recruit for this particular role that we were hiring for had submitted this sexual harassment complaint, stating that she felt really uncomfortable having lunch with my co-founder and I, and that she felt like the dynamics in the conversation were really unfair, where she did not have a lot of choice. She was appalled by the comment from me about penis skin. She felt like she did not have any control, given that we did not allow her to pay for lunch, that we insisted that we paid for it. And she felt that the conduct of my business partner helping her by putting his hand on her back out the door and us giving her hugs at the end of the interview was really uncomfortable for her, and was just inappropriate behavior. And immediately, for those of you who know me, my heart just sank. I mean, for somebody who was so excited, it seemed, for this opportunity, I was just shocked. Like, I didn't even see this coming. I would have had no idea in the whole experience that we had over that lunch hour and the moments afterwards back at our office that there was anything that she was uncomfortable with. But I had learned in the coming days after this that she was somebody who was a victim of abuse earlier in her life. She really struggled with relationship with men, and she had a history where there was a lot of hurt in her life that had led her to feeling really uncomfortable in that moment. And while it wasn't obvious to me, a lot of the things that she was doing to establish connection, to reaffirm that things were going well, was actually a coping mechanism and a way for her to not display that she was uncomfortable, to hopefully get through the meeting as quickly as possible. So that way she could ultimately find herself out of that situation, feeling much safer and no longer at risk, if you will, in her words. And so my heart was absolutely broken on this. I remember as soon as I learned about this, I was just like, oh my gosh, I take full responsibility for this. Yes, that's exactly what was said. I can explain to you the context, but it doesn't matter because this has obviously had a huge impact on her. And is there any possibility that she would be open to connecting with me directly here, whether it's through a mediated phone call or what have you? I would love to apologize and take full responsibility for this. This was not my intention. We thought this was a great conversation and a great interview. And after offering that, she had declined. Obviously, you might say, to have that conversation, and we didn't end up working together. But this was a huge experience for me. It was one that shook me to my core. For those of you who know me well, I'm somebody who's committed to helping others grow and creating great opportunities for that to be able to happen. And it would never be a part of my intent to put somebody in a position where they felt uncomfortable like that. But looking back, although we were spending some time getting to know her, I did not yet have an opportunity to fully understand at the level of granularity what her real personal experiences were that she went through that would have helped me have a more informed approach to some of those conversational pieces. And everybody's different, right? If I was in the same situation and circumstances that she had been through and had the same DNA, I would have reacted the very same way and it would have felt the same way for me. I believe that to be true. And somebody's perception is their reality. It's not to be argued with and debated with. But this was an experience that I went through where I really had to learn that value. I had to learn that firsthand. And gosh, now that I have been through that, let me tell you, boy, do I have approached my interviews and those first few interactions with new, whether it's customers or clients or business partners, entirely different, right? Until I fully understand who they are, what they've been through, I'm far more reserved and selective of how I might express my own humor or the words that I use as a means for starting to establish rapport. So this is a really important story, and one that, as I shared this with my client, Sarah, I was like, this is an experience that I went through where I learned that. And right away, as soon as I was done, her reaction was, holy shit, I can only imagine what it was like for you to receive that phone call because I know you so well. And that's just not you. But for you to be accused of that and to be somebody who was associated with that type of behavior, like that must have just absolutely rocked your world. I said, it absolutely did. And I'm so grateful that it happened because now I know. Now I can do better as a result of that. So I had shared with her, this is your doorway in to start to share your experience with your in-laws. What I want you to think about is, what is a story, a real story that you've been through where you've had to learn this value yourself firsthand? Where did you mess up personally, where the result of that experience is what has helped you be so convicted to this value that you're holding, that's made you so passionate about understanding what others have been through when you connect with them? I want you to think about what those stories are because that's your doorway in. Because when we start to share our stories with others, instead of calling them out, what we're doing is we're meeting them where they are and showing our own humanity in that process. It's like, hey, here's where I've messed up and had to learn this too. And I'm assuming you didn't even know that you were doing this, but I want to share a story with you of how I had to go and learn this. And I know this might be difficult for you to be able to hear, but some of the things that we've been experiencing together have had a similar impact on me. And I love you enough that I want you to know that. But I also want you to know at the same time that I too have had to learn this. And I am not perfect. I am a human just like you. But it's really important to me that I can be truthful with you so that you understand that. Because I know that you want to have a great positive relationship with me. And if I don't tell you this, it's really going to be difficult for us to be able to do that. So we model student behavior instead of being a teacher or somebody who is calling somebody out. Conflict, when navigated thoughtfully, can actually be the very thing that deepens our connection together. But when we call somebody out, it often creates a fracture. Well, by sharing our own stories and how we've learned these values, we can call somebody up. And ultimately, by calling them up, actually ascend the quality of the relationship that we have with them. So this has been huge for me. That particular story that I had shared with Sarah is one that I have shared with very, 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 very few people. And being invited to share that story with Sarah just over the last week or two, it just felt really right for me to start to share this with you as well. One, because I know there are a lot of people in the world right now who are being impacted by the behaviors, the words, the decisions of others, and are struggling to find a way to be able to share their truth with them. Our world is going through some really big changes right now. And so I want you to feel empowered with a way that will help you feel more comfortable to share your truth in a way that actually deepens your connection, especially with those that you love. So I hope you found this helpful today. Calling somebody up instead of calling them out. The power of using your stories as a way of modeling good student behavior. These are your doorways that you can start to open and walk through when it comes to having these critical conversations with the people that you love. And again, please remember, when you're calling somebody up, it is invitational. It is totally invitational. It is up for them to make that choice. But at the end of the day, I promise you, you're going to feel far better about yourself and the way that you navigated that moment by bringing your humanity into that conversation instead of bringing your criticism. Very seldom, if ever, have I seen criticism lead to a deeper connection in a relationship. When we bring our humanity, it gives us all permission to be human and to be able to learn through the experiences that we've had. So that's it from me today. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you have any questions or comments on this, I trust you're going to reach out. Let me know in the comments what resonates most with you. And if you have a different way of calling people up and inviting them to see their behavior through a different lens, I would love to learn from you. I would love to hear what's worked really well for you as well. Okay? But that's it from now. Have a great day and we'll talk to you next week.